Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to the 39th Forum on Tolerance. I'm the chair of the Forum on Tolerance Committee, Lori Carlson. Shoot me an email if you have any suggested topics that you'd like to see at the Forums on Tolerance. Here to welcome you, though, is Vice President of Academic Affairs, Dr. Karen Hynek.
Good afternoon, everyone, and again, welcome to North Shore Community College and our 39th Forum on Tolerance. First, before we get started, I would like to thank Dr. Lori Carlson and our entire Forum Steering Committee. Members, would you stand up to be recognized, please? Our topic today is respect and inclusion, supporting the struggles of our immigrant community. Most of us are immigrants ourselves or have a history of being from an immigrant in our ancestry. Think for yourself, how many of you are an immigrant? How many of you are children of immigrants? How many of you are grandchildren of immigrants? If we look around the room, we can clearly see that we all are immigrants, and this topic resonates for each and every one of us. As the only college here in Lynn, Massachusetts, we know that North Shore Community College is part of the fabric of this community. We recognize that our community's strength is our diversity of perspectives, and we recognize that immigrants are the backbone of our community. We are deeply saddened by the recent events that may have made some members of our immigrant community feel fearful, rejected, or excluded. So the Forum on Tolerance is bringing about an opportunity to begin a conversation where we have the opportunity to empathize and understand through our shared human experiences. Today, you will be hearing about the struggles of our immigrants by several different people. There will be time for questions, reflection, and a conversation over a shared meal. At this point in time, I'd like to introduce Massachusetts District Director, Rick Jakious.
Good morning, everyone. These are incredibly troubling and uncertain times for our immigrant community here in Massachusetts and across the country, quite frankly. And as I was preparing for this, it was fairly policy heavy. I wanted to talk a little bit about what was happening in DC right now, try and give some insights. And I was realizing that I was not going to be the bearer of a whole lot of good news this morning. And so on my drive here, I called one of my colleagues, Marvin Rode Hippolyte, young man, Haitian background, works in my office and works on our immigration casework. He's a Linner. And I said, Marvin, I can't go in there and just deliver bad news. Like, tell me some good stories. What have we done? What are some things that we've done as an office? Because most people understand that your U.S. Congressman works on kind of large issues of national importance, passing national laws, but don't always know that what I do and my teammates who work here in the district do. And a lot of that is constituent services. We try and help people when they're having problems navigating the federal bureaucracy. Now, those may be seniors, those may be veterans. A lot of the work we do are immigrants dealing with green card issues, challenges with USCIS. And so I called Marvin and I said, can you give me some glimmers of hope? What's the silver lining in this cloud? And he told me a couple stories. One about a constituent, a young man we had worked with who was having problems with his green card, was applying, was in the process of becoming a U.S. citizen, and our team had helped him navigate those and figure out the process. And just this last week, we had been able to attend with him his swearing in as a U.S. citizen. In another situation earlier this year, right before the beginning of the school year, there was a young woman who was enrolled at Salem State, who was having challenges and holdup with some bureaucracy with USCIS, was at risk of not being able to start her college education, and we were able to work with her to help resolve those issues, and she was able to maintain her enrollment in school and continue her classes. So those are the things that we get to do that are really kind of heartwarming and exciting and positive. And unfortunately, everything else I'm going to tell you is not as heartwarming as and exciting. Immigrants have really become one of the scapegoats for a growing sense of uncertainty and instability about the state of our country right now. For the first time in American history, Americans do not believe that their children will be better off than themselves. And as we've seen in many other sort of dark periods of human history, certain elements of our society try to pin the blame on that uncertainty on people that are different than them. And often that includes the immigrant community. And we're seeing that right here and right now. And that is why Congressman Moulton believes we need to tackle comprehensive immigration reform head on. In fact, there is a huge appetite out there for comprehensive immigration reform on both sides of the aisle. Seth frequently talks about how when he talks to his Republican colleagues at the member gym or over drinks, there's frequently agreement of the importance of the immigrant community. But unfortunately, right now, Congress is being held hostage by the Freedom Caucus, the Tea Partiers, who refuse to allow, and there's a lack, frankly, of political courage amongst members of Congress to step up and say, you know what, this is an issue where we can find some amount of agreement. There's always going to be differences of opinion on the details, but frankly, there is agreement that we need to tackle this head on, because right now we deal with immigration in piecemeal in a bunch of different pieces, and it's not, the process doesn't work. The process doesn't work for those who are sort of waiting their turn and sort of lawfully and legally seeking to enter the country, and it doesn't work for others who are maybe here under other circumstances but are seeking a lawful path to U.S. citizenship. We're a nation of immigrants. We're a stronger and more prosperous country because of immigrants, and we'll need to continue to welcome and retain immigrants if we expect to continue to thrive and be competitive in a global economy. When you look at the number of people that countries like China and India have, the just sheer talent pool they can draw from in terms of workforce, innovation, technology, that has always been the strength of the U.S. We have brought the best and the brightest from around the world. We've welcomed them, and they have embraced America and the American dream. When you look at so many amazing companies out there, many of them were started and founded by immigrants. And it's sad and it's scary that these people are now perhaps second-guessing whether this is the place, whether the United States is the place that they want to make home, where they want to come for their education, where they want to raise their family, where they want to invest their time and energy. Absent meaningful comprehensive immigration reform, our current immigration system policies are unfair, unproductive, disjointed, and often driven by emotion more than facts. And nowhere is that more clear than we saw in just the last 24 hours in response to the terrorist attack in Manhattan and the conversation that emerged around the diversity lottery. I don't know about you guys, I had no idea what the diversity lottery was before yesterday. We had to jump on a conference call and have our immigration specialist explain what the diversity lottery is. Yet it is being used as a weapon by the Trump administration to once again attack and chip away at immigration policy. So given this, I'm going to talk very, very quickly on 5 areas where the Congressman has been actively engaged, after which I'd be glad to field a few questions. The first area I want to talk about is refugees. It's important to remember that U.S. Refugee Program was created in the aftermath of World War II, when we saw what had happened by the Nazis, and we felt we had a moral obligation to accept people into this country who had survived the Holocaust. And Congressman Moulton believes we have a responsibility to live up to that legacy. When the Trump administration called for, and frankly our Governor Charlie Baker, supported limitations on Syrian refugees, Congressman Moulton pushed back, pointing out that refugees undergo some of the most intense screening of any group of immigrant that come into this country. Seth has been active in pushing for a unique group of refugees, the Iraqi and Afghani interpreters who work with our U.S. military personnel to keep them safe, to help translate, to provide intelligence. These are people who have risked their lives for our country and for our soldiers, and Seth believes that we should be welcoming those individuals. He helped his own Iraqi interpreter, the individual assigned to his unit, gain entry to this country. In fact, he lived for a period of time with Seth's family here in Marblehead and still lives in the U.S. and believes we need to extend that courtesy and benefit and right to those individuals who are out there risking their lives and the lives of their families, quite frankly, for our U.S. servicemen and women. And more recently, Seth has worked very closely with the federal delegation to push back against efforts to scale back refugee admissions. The Trump administration had announced for 2018 a reduction from what was supposed to be over, I believe, 110,000 refugees down to 45,000. The Massachusetts federal delegation has strongly pushed back against this and said that we need to go back to our original commitment of 110,000 refugees. The Muslim ban. Put simply, Congressman Moulton believes that a Muslim ban is both immoral and unconstitutional. Thus far, this has played out in our court system, and for the most part, the courts have agreed. It seems as though the Trump administration will kind of, despite what was very clearly stated by the president himself via Twitter, that this is a quote-unquote Muslim ban, the Trump administration keeps attempting to pretend it is something other than that and makes tweaks here and there, adds and subtracts countries. It's continuing to sort of resonate within the court system, and we're certainly monitoring and engaging in the public dialogue around the Muslim ban. DACA, this is an incredibly important issue and one that we'll be talking about in more depth. And you know, it is being used, unfortunately, as a political football. The Trump administration sort of opening demands in the negotiations that are happening currently around DACA include draconian measures that Congressman Moulton and, frankly, most Democrats will not support, including funding of the U.S.-Mexico border wall, curbing federal grants to so-called sanctuary cities in exchange for possible temporary or permanent inclusion of dreamers. These are measures that the Democrats will continue to push back on, and this will be playing out over the course of this calendar year, wrapping up in December as part of the budget negotiations. The key questions are going to be what will the trade-offs be in order to protect the dreamers? And will this be in a permanent or temporary extension? And quite frankly, a lot of that is going to come down to the political courage of Republican members on the other side of the aisle and their willingness to step up to their leadership on an incredibly important issue. So we must continue to fight for dreamers. TPS, temporary protective status. Some of you may know this well. It is an incredibly important and timely issue right now. Frankly, it's a ticking time bomb. Over the next few months, there are over nearly 8,000 people in Massachusetts who are here under temporary protective status. Almost all of those are from El Salvador and Haiti. If we do not extend temporary protective status, they are no longer legally allowed in this country. There's 7,800 people, as I said, 5,000 Salvadorans, 2,700 Haitians. There are almost more importantly, or I guess not more importantly, but I think it speaks to the complexity of the problem, 5,200 US-born children of individuals who are currently here under temporary protective status. TPS holders are our friends, neighbors, contributors to key sectors of our economy. Recent analyses have showed that as much as $645 million would be a loss from Massachusetts alone without the TPS holders. This is a concern that is shared by national business interests as well. The U.S. Chamber of Commerce, not the most liberal lobbying group out there, has recently called for an extension of TPS. There's signs that DHS is going to take this issue up as early as next week, certainly in the next few weeks. And frankly, the outlook, what we are hearing, is not positive. There are suggestions that there could be either a full or at least partial a reduction in the number of TPS, of individuals allowed to remain in the U.S. under TPS. What that means, we don't know, but we're actively engaged with the federal delegation to ensure the extension of TPS, and we're partnering with Congressman and Governor's office right now to send a letter asking Governor Baker to also stand up and make clear to the Trump administration that we need to extend temporary protective status. The last issue that I want to talk about, because it's timely with regards to the Tuesday election in Salem. Some of you may be Salem residents and voters. If so, I hope you will absolutely get out and vote, is the sanctuary city issue. Congressman Moulton recently wrote an op-ed article in the Salem Daily News in support of the Sanctuary for Peace initiative, both as a U.S. congressman, but also a resident and neighbor of Salem. Quite frankly, the simple fact of the matter is that we are all safer, regardless of our immigration status, when people feel that they can safely go to their law enforcement officials and report crimes and other things. We're all safer. Data for the Center of American Progress shows that there's 35.5 fewer crimes per 1,000 residents in counties that are sanctuary counties than counties that are not sanctuary counties. So the data shows that, frankly, we are safer when we show that people can be safe and should be able to turn out and talk to their law enforcement officials. And our nation's law enforcement system is well designed for this. There's a division of labor between our federal law enforcement and our municipal and state law enforcement. Federal law enforcement enforces immigration laws, which are federal statutes, and local law enforcement enforces state and local laws. There's plenty of work to be done by both, and this is a system that has worked successfully for many years. So we're a country of immigrants. There's a moral and economic imperative for us to continue to fight for the rights of immigrants. Congressman Moulton will continue to do so. Our office will continue to do so, both on the policy front and individually with our constituents. And we will continue to look and fight for ways to work together with people on the other side of the aisle at the same time for meaningful, comprehensive immigration reform. So thank you all very much.
So I'm very pleased that we have a student speaker for today. She's one of my favorite students. She's equally brilliant, beautiful, and a wonderful speaker and a great mom. Her name is Fatima Jallow-Nambouh.
Good afternoon, everyone. I know it's stated in the flyer that I'm going to talk about my immigration story. It's not a finished story, because I'm still putting pieces together. What I will share with you today is an identity group that has served as a struggle for me, served as a strength to my leadership, and how North Shore Community College has helped me transition. As I was introduced, I'm Fatima Jallow, a second-year liberal arts student. I'm a native of the Gambia, smallest country in Africa, actually. We have a population of 1.5. In my homeland, poverty and the abuse of political power are common. As a young child, the reality of the world in which I live was restricted and unjust. I remember feeling how unfair this was, which caused me to dream of becoming an agent of change. My dream to become an agent of change required me to gain knowledge that will help me advocate for my community and to develop my skills as a public servant. I came to the United States almost 4 years ago. My biggest struggle as an immigrant was not the fact that I left all my family behind or my friends. My biggest struggle was finding a sense of belonging. I wanted to be part of a community that shared the same goals with me. I must say, I made a new choice coming to Lynn. Lynn is actually a very good city. The people here are very warm. Lynn community embraces diversity, and everyone here is very loving and caring. After I was finally able to establish a sense of belonging, I enrolled into North Shore Community College. I had no idea what to do and where to start. I registered for classes, but the rest was all new to me. Fortunately for me, during my orientation, a staff member walked into TRIO and talked to us about a supportive service that helps students with academic achievement. TRIO offered me the support that I needed and helped me set goals each academic year. With the help and encouragement of Vanessa Bate, I was also able to get involved and feel more belonging. Now I am part of this community, a community that makes me feel belonging, a community that has welcomed me, helped me grow, and bringing me closer to achieving my dream. And since I have strived to bring positive change, I'm involved in so many different groups that I'm often asked, how do you do all of it? My response, I am giving back to the community that has served as an inspiration to me, a community that has supported me. My service as a college student engagement, student trustee, vice president to the multicultural community, and a TLC leader through our tutoring center is because of that same identity that I belong to, an immigrant. This is where I got my strength from. It is so sad that so many times we're often looked at as we're different, but it's because of the differences that we feel that give us the extra drive to want to do better. I would end my story with a very short quote. It's actually a favorite quote of mine. I am not the same, haven't seen the moon shine on the other side of the wall. It is imperative that we listen to one another's story to build our understanding and tolerance. Once we are open to seeing others' view and their experience, we would have a change of heart. Like many other immigrants, I'm very grateful for what America has offered me. I am determined to make the best of all opportunity presented to me and live up to the challenges as I will continue to strive and make positive change. Thank you all.
Okay, if anyone has any questions for Fatima, you can raise your hand. I'll bring you the mic.
I think it would be interesting for at least me to know how you ended up in the U.S. What made you come here? Like, were there people you knew here, or how did you come from Gambia to the U.S.?
Actually, there was some time ago, I had a very funny saying about Massachusetts. They always say that here in Massachusetts, they don't develop cars or anything else, but they develop brain. And like I said, my dream of becoming a change agent, I actually felt like I needed to get out of the continent of Africa to go abroad and see how other countries live and see how why Africa is different from the rest of the world. And it's all this knowledge that I'm getting that I'll probably take back to my country and see if I can make a positive change.
How do you think your college experience is different from a native of this country?
That's a good question. I really wouldn't know the right answer, but to me, I feel like finding yourself in a place where you don't really feel that you belong makes it harder for everybody else, especially for me. When I first came in, I didn't really know anything because the educational system here is quite different from what I'm used to and comfortable to. So I did really have a tough time trying to get myself situated. But I mean, like I said, I was able to get involved more and interacted more. And I feel like my presence here in the college is different because it's because of that differences that I felt that made me want to get more involved. I have noticed that a lot of students here in the school are not really involved in extracurricular activities, or probably they just come and take classes and go. And probably that's because they don't need to get more involved. But I feel the need of getting involved because I wanted to be part of a community.
I wanted to know, are you going to go back home and what are you going to say to people back home to have them be inspired to come here as well and gain what you've gained?
I will refer you back to my quote. I have not been the same, having seen the mood at the other side of the wall. I think sometimes what happens is we have a very limited judgment because we haven't seen what it feels like to be in the other side of the wall. I have traveled versely, and I would likely go back home because I'm trying to major in political science and do international diplomacy. But for me, my experience here in America, it's not to change me personally. It's to give me the strength that I need to go back home and be able to change my community. And if anyone else from my community want to come here and get the same experience, I would definitely advise them to come to Massachusetts.
Hello, everyone. My name is David Houle, and I work here at the college, and I'm part of the Forum on Tolerance Committee. And today I'm here to introduce our keynote speaker. Now, our keynote speaker was born in Terceira, Azores, Portugal. It's a tiny, small island in the middle of the Atlantic Ocean. Now, she immigrated to the United States in 1972 at the age of just 9 years old. And it's here where she learned a new language and assimilated into the American culture. She considers herself bicultural. She also knew that she wanted to practice law, so after graduating from Rivier College with a major in paralegal studies, as well as minors in political science and English, she then went off to Boston College Law School, graduating in 1988. Now, she had a good sense that she wanted to practice in the greater Lowell community, and because of this, she joined a law firm, Corday and Santos, where she practiced mostly real estate law. By 1996, she joined the firm that today is Alphen and Santos, where she committed herself to immigration law as a focus of her practice. Today, her clients range from multinational companies to mid and small companies that need foreign workers and families and individuals who have immigration law needs. Although she can only work within the framework of immigration law that exists in the United States, she does advocate for fair and just immigration laws. Our keynote describes herself as being from her country of choice, as she was not born here. She describes the United States as a country that she deeply loves and feels fortunate to be part of, knowing that many around the world would love to come to the United States and make it their home. Her practice is located in one of my favorite towns, the home of Kimball's Ice Cream, Westford, Massachusetts, and it has a global reach, her practice. She lives in Chelmsford with her husband and 13-year-old twin daughters, Elizabeth and Sarah. And our keynote has spoken at many events at our sister community college, Middlesex Community College, where she has been a panelist on many forums on immigration as well as women's events too. Her presentation is At the Heart of U.S. Immigration, DACA. And we are very, very lucky to have her here today. Let us now welcome Attorney Maria Santos.
Thank you so much, Mr. Houle, for that wonderful introduction about who I am, where I come from, and where life started for me in that tiny island. One of my friends very recently went to visit England, and she's passing over the Azores, and afterwards she texted me saying, you know what, you come from a very interesting area. It's in the middle of nowhere. Really true. It's a tiny, tiny island. So every day, my dad passed away this year in April, and he was the one who made the decision to come to this country, and I thank him for it every single day of my life, because I see that had I been in the Azores at that time, it's very unlikely that I would be an attorney, have been able to do what I wanted to do. and I do know that this is the country of opportunity, and I appreciate it. I am concerned about where this country is going with immigration, and I've been concerned about where this country is going with immigration for many years. You really have to think about it. We haven't had a major change in immigration law for well over 50 years. A lot happens in a country in 50 years, right? So as a result of that, we're at a point where it could go one way or another, and we need to be well informed. So I want to step back for a minute and really, really thank Professor Carlson for inviting me and for having this wonderful concept and ongoing discussion on tolerance. Because I do think that what makes us special in this country is not our similarities in many ways, but truly our differences. And I'm going to put it in the words of my daughter Elizabeth, who in the 4th grade, her teacher went around the room and said at the beginning of the year, how are we going to come together and make this a really wonderful class this year? And everybody went around and it got to Elizabeth and she said, we're going to accept each other's differences. And the teacher sent me an email and said, wow, you've got a deep one here. Yes, that's what it's about. It's accepting each other's differences. And I don't know about you, but probably because you're here, you are the type of person who likes to do exactly that as well. And you probably understand and see that you feel comfortable in rooms, in classes, in your homes, where you can accept the differences that we all bring to the table. And although I look very white and I look very, I could blend into the American scene, I think, I am bicultural. And that makes a tremendous difference to me in how I approach things. And I see each person, I believe, as an individual, which I think is key to any immigration practice. So what I want to focus on today, because there's so much in immigration, as you just heard, is DACA, the dreamers. Incredible people. Some of you may be DACA recipients. I'm not going to ask for you to identify yourselves because some people don't feel comfortable doing that. I've represented several DACA recipients, and I still do today. And this week had the pleasure of saying to someone, I just got your approval, Lynn, and now you're extended for another 2 years. And he was one of those folks that I had to get in on time to make sure that he gets his additional 2 years. And let me explain this to you as I go along here. I don't want it to make it boring because regulation and anything to do with law sometimes can be that. So let me just start by doing this. If you were to think about the person that you think America should let in through its borders legally, what would that person look like? What would that person do? And do you think that person should be a direct contributor to the United States before they receive any benefits or anything? How long should they be here? What do you describe as the American immigrant? And believe me, as we go forward in getting, eventually we're going to have comprehensive immigration reform, and as we continue these piecemeal approaches to immigration, that is exactly what we're doing. We're defining who we think should be coming through those borders. So, go back. Statute of Liberty, those beautiful words at the statute. Tons of people came in through that port of entry. They just got on a ship, and then they had to go through immigration at the statute. And now they're in the United States, and they've been here for many, many years, and they were the foundation of what today is America, the way it looks. They built those skyscrapers. They created so many businesses, did all these things. And yet sometimes today, excuse me, I get passionate on this, when I speak to some of those folks, they don't see an America that looks like what they looked like at that time. Okay? So let's go through DACA for a minute. And I think you'll get what I'm talking about. All right, so what happened was that President Obama wanted to do something about immigration, and everybody says that, you know, he really should have taken this issue up before he did health care. Well, this is history now, so this is where we are. He wanted to still do something about immigration, and Congress, he couldn't get them together. So he had to issue an executive order. And he actually wanted to issue more than just the DACA executive order. He wanted to also include parents of these young folks who came to the United States and give them a way to get some temporary reprieve. But that has been totally shut down, and it was shut down almost immediately when the order was issued. The same thing happened to that order that's happening to a lot of the Trump orders, President Trump's orders, where he signs them and almost immediately lawsuits are filed that put the orders in a stop mode. So the DACA executive order by President Obama was in July of 2012. It's just an administrative type of relief, and it's called prosecutorial discretion, which means that the president issued orders to ICE, the police of immigration, and to its agencies, USCIS, which is the administrative one, and said, look, your priority now is not going to be these young people. It's going to be, he put it on anyone who had criminal histories and so on, and that was going to be their focus. And it suspends proceedings. So if any of these people that are part of DACA were already in removal or in proceedings to have to leave the country forcibly by police action, ICE, it put a stop to it. Okay? And proponents who support this authority to defer action are the ones who say, you know what, the president has this power. And those who are against it, of course, say that it's too much power in a president, and his immigration abilities don't go to this extent. It did not change a person's immigration status. So what that means is a young person who came into the United States through the border or some states illegally, or came in with their folks on a plane and overstayed their visa, they are still that today. All it is that there's an order saying we're not going to do anything about getting you out of here while you're in this DACA process. It did not create a path to citizenship. It didn't establish eligibility for any other immigration status, and it didn't cure any past problems with immigration, unlawful status. During the Reagan administration, several changes were made to the immigration law that created these concepts of an unlawful presence and unlawful ability to be in the United States. And if you leave the United States, you actually are barred from ever coming in again for like 10 years. And there are other restrictions because you were here unlawfully without status. And that's why so many people have remained in the United States. So that today, the estimate is that we have over 12 million who are illegally present, quote unquote, in unlawful status. And out of those, the number that qualify for DACA, the dreamers, they estimate to be anywhere between 1 million to 2 million. Who are these folks? They're under the age of 31. 31 is a pretty darn good age. You've accomplished quite a bit by that time, right? So think about it. You don't have DACA right now, going forward, But you did for the past maybe 4 or 5 years since the order. Now you had a work authorization card as a result of DACA. You got yourself a job. You were able to go to school legally. You can drive. That's a big one. The first thing a DACA recipient who's like 17, 18 years old says to me is, oh, here's a copy of my driver's license. They're so excited for this. And they're probably the only legal drivers in their family. So think about that. They arrived in the United States before they were 16. They continuously stayed here and had, if they left, it was very brief and for very specific purposes, like the family went back to take care of an elderly relative and then returned again. They entered the United States without that authorization before 6/15/2012. They were out of status before that date. And they are attending school or have graduated from high school or have been discharged from the military. No convictions are allowed that amount to a felony or more 3 misdemeanors, not permitted. Very minor things with the law, you can explain them away, but if it raises it to that level, you're not going to be a DACA recipient. Estimated 1 million qualify. Over 800,000 have received an approval. Okay. The executive order was in 2012, now remember, so many have renewed it 3 times. And this means each time it's a 2-year approval. They have disclosed so much personal information to the government that one of the greatest fears for the DACA recipients is that their families will be deported as a result of the fact that they applied for DACA. And when DACA was first introduced, the Department of Homeland Security did issue a statement that this information would not be used to lead to deportations. So I tell that to all my clients, but it's something that they have to consider carefully. And now we've got a lot of restrictionist things going on, but supposedly there was some deal entered into between the president, President Trump, and Nancy Pelosi and Chuck Schumer in the White House. Many of you have probably seen Chuck Schumer hugging the president in the White House. And the idea, I believe, is that it's going to be part of this end-of-the-year budgetary type of deal, that we are going to get something that addresses DACA. What the president basically said is Congress needs to act. And it's true. Congress does need to act. They need to take up what essentially is the DREAM Act. Now, let's talk about the DREAM Act. The DREAM Act in its pure form would be, who's eligible for that? Essentially, it would be the DACA recipients. They estimate that there's about 3 million people who could actually benefit from the DREAM Act. In its pure form, what it says is, all those conditions that you had to meet in order to be a DACA recipient, you will have to meet again in order to get into the DREAM Act. You will have to have been in the United States at that 4 years before the act is enacted. Now, I'm going to say this. This is what's out there. This is what's been introduced. Who knows what potentially a final form will be? But that's what they're talking about. You would get a conditional green card for 8 years. You have to be in school. You have to either achieve 2 years of college plus 3 years of work. So you have all these 8 years in a conditional status to be able to do these things. Serving in the military is another thing that could happen to you. And then, if you don't have felonies and you don't have those misdemeanors, you can apply for a permanent card. And then, once you've got the permanent card, 5 years as a resident, you can do what almost all green card holders want to do, become a citizen. Now here's where it gets hairy. You've heard of chain migration, and let's put an end to chain migration. Chain migration means this. You, the dreamer, now have a green card. You have become a citizen after you held this green card for these 5 years. These are all processes through the agency. And now you want to legalize your parents. And in today's law, under what exists today, that's exactly what you can do. You can petition for your parents, and under the law as it exists, the fact that they are here without authorization and have even worked illegally is going to be forgiven under the current law. So you could apply for your parents, and your parents can then have a green card. And this has happened to many people in the United States. That is what chain migration. What's another possibility? Once you're a citizen, you might have a brother or sister abroad, and you want them to come to the United States. Then those folks don't get an immediate visa. Those folks are going to have to wait maybe 12 or more years for a visa to become available. But once it does, then they may come to the United States. That's what they're talking about when it's chain migration. And that's the kind of stuff you're going to hear talked about now in compromises to what they are saying is the Pure Dream Act. Do you believe that immigration law in the United States should include the ability to apply to as far off a relative as a brother or sister who was abroad at that point or under the age of 21 at that point? Where do you think it should stop? Another thing you're going to hear a lot about now is, of course, securing the borders. And the point was already made that Mr. Trump has said he would want the border fence. That's billions of dollars. Do you think that it's worth including that in this kind of compromise? Other things that are restrictive that you may want to include in this, that maybe the dreamers don't want as a compromise, might include that they have to have a full bachelor's degree in particular fields. And we're hearing right now from the president that he believes in, we want only the exceptional people to come into the United States. Just like Canada, England, Australia have changed the way that people immigrate to their countries, we want to do the same, because we want people who come here to already have those degrees and to make it a points merit system where the majority of people who come in are going to be employment-based immigrants and not family-based. So stop those brothers and sisters from coming. Stop those parents. Give them a limited number each year who can come in. These are the kinds of arguments that you're going to see. And at this point, I think what I'd like to do is see if there are any of you who would like to either ask a question or make a comment about what you think the face of immigration should be, and whether you think these restrictions or this setup of what DACA is should be the face of immigration. Here's what I think about the dreamers. I think the dreamers are incredible people. When I sit with them at any event, they are working hard, getting those degrees, creating some debt for themselves, because almost any student today is doing exactly that, moving themselves into becoming a part of the American society in a way that cannot be done without some kind of legal status. Not lying anymore about their social security number, something they made up, because they've got one now. Not being able, let me put it another way, being able to look at their parents or whoever ever brought them here without authorization and saying, you know what, I accept the decision you made, even though you didn't tell me what my real status was. Even though I only found out when I was a senior in high school that I couldn't go to college because I didn't have a status. And trusting again, because many dreamers lost that trust for their own family for quite a bit of time. And I hope many of them have made it up with their families. It has, in many ways, divided people. Because if you're brought here, you're under the illusion that everything is just fine and dandy. You get a very high grades in your high school and you want to go to college, and suddenly you can't. The disappointment is huge. You're stuck. You're waiting tables. You're doing something like that without authorization. Okay, so I believe deeply in the dreamers. Where do you stand? I think the mics are available for questions or for comments. Anybody interested?
Please. Could you clarify one of the things that you said? Here at this college, we accept folks who are residents of Massachusetts, which means we know we have DACA students, even though we don't require them to disclose that.
Okay.
But you said that in the DREAMer Act, people would have to have 2 years of college or maybe 4 years of college in order to move on. What happens to DACA students? They're not eligible for financial aid. And
Okay.
So in order to get those 2 years or to get those 4 years, it makes it almost impossible that you have to work. Yeah, you'd have to work and maybe go part-time to college,
Yep.
so it may take much longer.
So in the pure
So could
dream,
you clarify
that's
that?
a very important question, and I think the consideration is there in that pure dream act, because remember, you can be a conditional resident for up to 8 years in order to fulfill the conditions to then get your permanent green card. And the conditions would be attending college, and you might be working part-time in order to achieve that, and so on. But at that point, you have a conditional card. So the DREAM Act passes. Let's envision a wonderful world where the DREAM Act finally is law, and these close to 3 million that they think qualify under this start knocking at our doors, or on their own going to places that are filling out the wonderful forms, paying the great filing fee, and getting that conditional green card. There will be conditions, so you have to prove that you have a high school diploma, or that you are pursuing one, or that you have a GED, the same things that the DACA folks have had to prove. You get that conditional card, and then you go to college. And you have up to 8 years to fulfill those conditions, and then apply for the permanent. You might take less than 8 years, I would hope. It's hard today. That was a great question, because it looks like I messed up, didn't clear that one up too well. At this point, I could go on about immigration for eternity, and I'm not going to, but I'm going to tell you this. I've been doing this now for over 20 years. I am going to wait for comprehensive immigration reform. But I know, and I think it'll come while I'm still an attorney, but I know many fellow practitioners who have actually just given up. They're in their, later 60s, mid 60s, and they said, we can't continue with this battle. And the reason is because every day that I'm sitting in that office doing my work, I'm getting more and more and more regulatory decisions that are making it tougher and tougher, even for legal immigration. And one of the things that I do every day that has been in the news tremendously is the H-1B visa. You've heard of this, I'm sure. That's for folks who already have a bachelor's degree or more, who come to fill a position in the United States that's been offered to them by a company in the United States. And it's getting it gets more fraud prevention site visits than any other non-immigrant visa, except maybe for the R visa, which is for religious workers, where none is issued without a visit to the church. Okay, so we've got plenty of that out there. I forgot one other thing that you're going to see a lot in the news, and that's called E-Verify. Has anybody heard of E-Verify? E-Verify is a system where employers check whether the individual has the right to work in the United States before giving the final hiring decision to the individual. And that was placed back in the immigration law at the time of the Reagan reforms, but never funded. We've had a couple of pilot programs. It is not a mandatory thing on employers right now, but that's going to be one of the potential conditions to piecemeal reform. And what that will bring to employers is a lot of requirements, and let's see how it comes out. But that is another thing that you're going to see a lot of. All right? It's been a true pleasure. I love what I do, love meeting the people that I meet. I didn't go at all into some of the fun things I do with family immigration, but I'll end with one final fun one. I have a client who is Iranian. She fled Iran. It's because she had to. And she's a refugee in the United States. She's legally here, has her green card. She's becoming an American citizen this year. Years ago, she fell in love with a Syrian. And the Syrian went to Turkey, could not find refuge there. Guess where he is today? With a green card, quote unquote, permanent residency in this country, Brazil. He is now a dual national of Syria and Brazil, living in Brazil. She wants to marry him. She wants to have a family with him. The families all love each other, but what have we got out there? Orders, right? And those orders say, we don't want Iraqians, we don't want Syrians, and especially the refugee statuses they have. So she just took a trip, and they met halfway in another South American country, and then she wants to file for a fiancé visa to bring him to the United States. Let's see where this love story goes. But that's the kind of impacts that you're seeing out there today with these kinds of immigration decisions. I wish you a wonderful afternoon. Thank you for having this forum. It's wonderful. Thank you.